Hi, I'm Chuck Olenek. I'm a reenactor. And for 36 years, I used to use living history in the classroom to try to bring history to life for my students. I would wear the garb, right? Got garb here. And I would stay dressed up in the garb the entire day, get a lot of weird looks from kids, a lot of weird looks from adults too. And I would try to immerse my kids completely in another time period, another culture as best I could. Well, I'm not in the classroom anymore, so I'm repurposing myself. I still have a room full of garb at the house. I still have a passion for bringing the past to life. That's also why I'm involved in historical reenactment. I have a desire to preserve landmarks because landmarks tend to go away. And I've seen plenty of that. And I like to play history detective. So what I'm doing is I'm involved in a very pretentious sounding mission Odyssey, where I visit each of the sites of Alta California and do my best to tell the tale of each place and to create a visual record of the experience. And so this involves going to all of the missions. I'm currently at Mission San Francisco Solano, the last of the California missions. All of the Asistencias. I've visited 9 so far. I have 2 more to hit, probably today. The Estancias, those are ranchos that were to support the missions, and most of those are paved over, but I've managed to find a few. And the Presidios. Those are the fortifications designed to protect the missions. Well, what I'm doing today is I'm wrapping up my visit to Mission San Francisco Solano, and I'm going to go to the final Presidio that was built, Presidio de Sonoma, which is right across the street, and I hope you stick with me on my journey. The creation of the 4 Spanish Presidios in Alta California happened as the nearby missions were founded. It could be argued that in the era they were established for the protection of colonizers and missions alike, they were equal to the missions in the eyes of the Spanish authorities. They helped stake claims to territory. Each of the 4 Spanish Presidios had a strategic purpose. The first one, in San Diego, was off a large bay with a narrow entrance with Mexico nearby. From here would march the Portola expedition in 1769 in search of Monterey Bay, but would discover San Francisco Bay instead. Monterey, the second Presidio, may have been established because of exaggerated reports of the size and safety of Monterey Bay, but it still became the site of the capital of Alta California. El Presidio Real de San Francisco, founded 6 years after Monterey, was there to guard the Boca de San Francisco, or the Golden Gate, specifically from the Russians, and to allow protection of Spanish claims along the northern coastline. 6 years later, El Presidio Real de Santa Barbara was established at a relatively poor bay by the Santa Barbara Channel, but bridged the long distance between the Presidios of San Diego and Monterey, established a Spanish presence along the narrow corridor between ocean and mountains, vulnerable to Indian attack, such as the 1824 Chumash Revolt, and served as a jumping-off point for Spanish expansion into the interior. They were divided into 4 military districts, each with the responsibility of guarding the missions established at the time of founding, as well as those which came later, which I tried to organize my mission Odyssey based upon those military districts. El Presidio Real de San Diego, founded in 1769 became the center of the first military district and was responsible for the defense of the missions at San Diego, San Luis Rey, San Juan Capistrano, and San Gabriel. And I'd imagine the asistencias at Santa Isabel, San Antonio de Paula, and San Bernardino de Sena. El Presidio Real de Santa Barbara, the last Spanish presidio founded in 1782, headed not the fourth, but the second military district, made up of missions San Fernando, San Buenaventura, Santa Barbara, Santa Ynez, and La Purísima, and the asistencias Santa Paula, Santa Gertrudis, and San Marcos. El Presidio Real de San Carlos de Monterrey, founded in 1770, the second Presidio, was responsible for the defense of all installations within the third military district, which meant the missions at San Luis Obispo, San Miguel, San Antonio de Padua, Soledad, San Carlos, and San Juan Bautista, and the asistencia at Santa Margarita. The Presidio at San Francisco, founded in 1776, the third Presidio was responsible for all the installations within the fourth military district, which meant the missions at Santa Cruz, San Jose, Santa Clara, Dolores, San Rafael, and San Francisco Solano, and the asistencias San Pedro y San Pablo, and San Mateo, and Santa Rosa, and Santa Eulalia. So where did Sonoma fit in? Mexico achieved independence in 1821, so there are no more Spanish missions being built. But Mexico faced the threat of growing Russian encroachment into the region north of San Francisco Bay. Governor Luis Antonio Arguello, as part of a plan to fortify the region, worked with Franciscan Padre Jose Altamira to establish Mission San Francisco Solano against the desires of church leaders who disapproved of government intervention into religious matters. 11 years later, it didn't matter. The mission was secularized. In 1835, soldados de cuerda from the Presidio at San Francisco were ordered north to the recently secularized mission of San Francisco Solano. They would be there to create a buffer against further Russian movement eastward in California, because this was a big concern to the Mexican government. And so the company went north and they began building a new Presidio. And the Presidio basically started off with, crude outer walls in 1837. By 1839, there was, an adobe barracks and adobe buildings. By 1840 or 41, the Presidio was complete, and the commander of this group was Mariano Vallejo. Mariano was named military commander of the northern frontier, which meant he was responsible for dealings with any Native Americans, and to that end, he ended up creating a system of using direct military action, but also creating alliances with Chief Marin in the west and Chief Solano in the east, and using his or their forces as auxiliaries. And during his time as commander in the north, he ended up engaging in about 100 different actions, but there were accounts that people viewed Vallejo as actually very reasonable compared to most of the other commanders who had conducted military actions against the native Californians. Now, in this time period where the soldados were moved to the barracks at Sonoma, all the other presidios had been abandoned by Mexican military, and at best they were being occupied or used by civilians who had taken up those duties. sort of like a National Guard. And so here's this company that's in Sonoma. It's the last one. And even though the Mexican government and the California government were making it possible for the troops to receive money and materiel, it wasn't enough. And so Vallejo was making up the difference with his own funding, which may explain some of his other actions later on when he started to get a bit greedy about land and such. But in time, like November of 1844, he finally disbanded the company because he said, guys, I can't afford you anymore. And he ordered that the military equipment be left at the barracks, and that would be for the use of the civilians who would end up defending the area. And there were civilians that used the Sonoma barracks for that purpose. On June 10th, 1846, there was a group of fearful and distrustful American immigrants who were not really happy with the way California was under Mexico. And they had seized a herd of California government-owned horses. And they were already taking action. They looked at the idea of they needed to seize the pueblo of Sonoma and seize Vallejo, and that would stall efforts of the Mexican government to stop them. And so on June 14th, Flag Day, interestingly enough, the Bear Flag Revolt begins, and the pueblo of Sonoma and the barracks of Sonoma get seized without a shot being fired by like 11 a.m. And Vallejo and 3 of his associates are arrested and they're taken someplace else. And now these Americans have access to the military supplies that were in the barracks that Vallejo had left there for civilian use. Well, there's some new civilians that are going to be using this. And now other American immigrant families start moving north towards Sonoma, and some of them will be staying in the barracks and some of them will be staying in the homes of individuals around here. The Bear Flag Revolt is on. June 24th, John C. Fremont, who has been in charge of a mapping expedition, which, by the way, has been making a lot of trouble for the Mexican government because Fremont was not sticking with any of the agreements and he was going into places he wasn't supposed to go to, including occupying Gallivan Peak, which eventually is going to get renamed Fremont Peak. He shows up at Sonoma and he's abandoned all pretense of neutrality. And what he does is he convinces the rebels, who are calling themselves the Bears, to throw in with him and create an all-volunteer force called the California Battalion. And so each man either signed or he made his mark, and Fremont's forces are growing, and now he's got additional military supplies. So what he's going to do is the next day he is going to march south. He's going to leave 50 men behind, and he's going to march over to Sutter's Fort. And then we're looking at the further rumblings of a war coming between the United States and Mexico. There have been rumblings of war for a while, and Commodore Sloat gets the word. He's the man in charge of the Pacific Squadron, gets the word, and July 7th, the American flag is raised above the Customs House in Monterey. July 9th, the flag goes up in the plaza at Yerba Buena, which is going to become San Francisco. And a soldier gets sent, Joseph Revere, he gets sent carrying 2 American flags with the 27 stars at that time. And he's carrying these flags. He goes north to Sonoma. When he arrives, one of the flags is raised in front of the barracks at Sonoma, and that's when pretty much the Bear Flag Revolt is over, the California Republic is over, the United States has seized California. Well, we have 21 missions out of the way, 5 Presidios out of the way. That really should be the end of things, because it's the end of the mission trail, except there's 2 more assistencias that I found out about, and I have to go find them. So I hope you stick with me on my journey.